One of the problems there is that it doesn't, if you hit record to the cloud or record to the computer, it doesn't tell you which one you did.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hit it at all. It just happened.
Oh, that's me. I'm the one who hits record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it gives you two options, but you can't tell when the voice, you can't hear the voice, I don't think, but the voice says recording in progress, but it doesn't say whether you're recording locally or in the cloud, and the buttons, the options are right next to each other. So I just end up stopping it and restarting it to make sure. None of this matters. Okay, we are in chapter 21. I'm gonna finish off 21. It's more Abimelech stuff, which I only have so much to say about, and then we can get on to 22. Probably one of the more important chapters in the Bible, certainly in Genesis. A climactic moment in Abraham's life, in the development of Genesis, and then also in the history of redemption, really, even though, yeah, actually it is used in the New Testament. We'll talk about that a little bit, how the story of the near sacrifice of Isaac is used in the New Testament. I've already got the chapter open there with James. We may not get to it today, but we will. So let's just let me just look at yeah, let's look at this real quick. This is subject matter. There's no substitute for knowing subject matters. We proceed from chapter 12 to 22, which we're going to be in today. We are in 21 with the birth of Isaac, which is a very condensed narrative, boom, boom, of Isaac, the arrival of the anticipation with the arrival of the three messengers in 20, then immediately the birth of Isaac, and then immediately the disposition, if you will, of the case of Ishmael, who was hanging around this whole time as a competitor to the inheritance. So now that that situation has been taken care of, he's off now to create his own posterity, which we'll close off 21 with a little bit of that. We're gonna have this little story about Abimelech, which we have to figure out why it's in there. I don't have a lot to say about it. And then we'll move on to 22. And no sooner is Isaac born in narrative space, no sooner is Isaac born, then we have another crisis that threatens the covenant promise once again. Only this time, God is the, you know, what do you call it? Facilitator, the catalyst for the problem. So let's go to 21, unless somebody wants to say something. All right, we're going to close out here with the story of Hagar and Ishmael, where God appears to her and issues a promise alongside of the promise that God had made to Abraham with regard to his descendants and Isaac. And that is that you see there in blue in verse 18, I will make him, Ishmael, into a great nation, because she's at her wit's end. She's wandering literally in the desert, in the southern desert. See that word wandering in green there. In the southwestern corner of Canaan, which corresponds to the modern Gaza Strip in Israel, and the land of what will become the land of the Philistines. But she's wandering with no future. And then we get this statement after she's saved, because she sees the water in 19. We get that statement in verse 20. God was with the boy, that's what he is now, Ishmael. He grew up, he lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. So there's this summary about his life. He lived in the wilderness of Paran. I forgot to look and see where that's at. His mother took a wife from him from the land of Egypt. What is her association? Why would she take a wife from Egypt? She's Egyptian. So the implication here is that she didn't wander forever in Beersheba. She went back home. And she found a wife for Ishmael among her people, kind of like Abraham found a wife for Isaac. Wait a minute, where am I at here? Yeah, Abraham found a wife for Isaac among his people, And then Rebecca is gonna find a wife, Rebecca and Isaac are gonna find a wife for Jacob among his people on the other side of the Jordan. In Paddan Aram, I think it is, and she does the same thing. So she goes home, the implication is, reading between the lines, and she does well enough, at least. And Ishmael prospers. And so he heads off in his own direction. He will reappear in a little bit with the death of Abraham, where him and Isaac will bury Abraham. And so there seems to be, like there is with Jacob and Esau, this reconciliation. I don't know what it would be, what you would call it, but it's a remarkable thing to be kicked out of the clan when you're the heir, forced on your own and your mother. And the end of the story is this relatively good element where he's back with Isaac burying their father, and then he's going to disappear forever. So that's interesting. The same kind of thing's going to happen with Jacob and Esau. So God works these things out in Genesis. Even that's going to happen all the way to the end, because there's going to be this enmity from the clan to Joseph, who will be sold into bondage in Egypt, prefiguring Israel. But then there will be a reconciliation at the end of the story there too. Okay, so that's it for Hagar, and fundamentally for Ishmael as well. Threat to the covenant resolved. The covenant promise is resolved with a happy ending. At least at that time. I don't know that you would say it's so happy today. But we can move on now. At that time, Abimelech, which is to say the king, and Phicol, the commander of his army, so we're in what will become Philistine territory, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. So we've just seen the evidence of that state. This is like one of those examples of a summary statement of truth out of the mouth of sort of a non-believer, right? And this happens fairly frequently where a foreigner shows up almost as a mouthpiece for God himself. That's going to be the case with the queen who's going to arrive at Solomon's doorstep at the height of his glory and be the one who summarizes the great blessing on Solomon through God, that God has blessed Solomon. That'll be a foreign queen. You have the demons in the narrative, in the gospel narratives, who pronounce Jesus. I think it's Mark, where after the calming of the sea, the disciples are going to say, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And it's this rhetorical question that they don't know the answer to. And it's kind of a remarkable, it's another unflattering moment in the portrayal of the disciples in the narrative of the Gospels. Because not only do they not have the answer, in the next story, in the next sequence, he goes to the tombs and encounters a demon-possessed man, and the demon gives the answer to the questions that the disciples didn't know the answer to. What have we to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High, or something like that? Son of David, I don't remember exactly how they say it, but they give the answer to the question. So, it's just now Abimelech shows up to pronounce that, even he understands with his own eyes that God is blessing Abraham. And he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of this I don't know, this phenomenon, that this thing he's been stuck with in his own territory. There's a God present who is blessing this man Abraham, and he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of that again. Because Abimelech was the one who found himself accidentally on the wrong side of that blessing and cursing dynamic just a little while ago when he took Sarah. Sarah. And so now it's this preemptive thing. It's okay. After the story with Hagar and Ishmael, where Ishmael and blessing is pronounced on Ishmael, God is the God who blesses, and he can see that. The narrative has shown that, and now it's out of the mouth of this foreigner. So he wants a covenant. But listen to how it unfolds. God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God, your God, the one who is blessing you, that you will not deal falsely with me. Why would he say that? Why would he need a covenant, an oath from Abraham that he won't deal falsely with Abimelech? Why would Abimelech need that?
Well, first of all, history. I mean, he already lied to him about Sarah being his wife.
Don't forget, Abraham, I know you, right? We have a history. And so I don't want that to happen again. And the reason it happened the first time was because you lied to me. That's what he thinks. So I'm asking that you will swear an oath that you will not lie, you will not deal falsely with me anymore, so that your God doesn't curse me again. That's how I read this. It's unflattering. Or with my descendants, or with my posterity. But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. So he gets out of Abraham, look, you're a visitor here. You're just a traveler. So, you come in, your God comes with you. We're sort of stuck here. We're sort of stuck with the situation. So this is what I'm asking for. I just want prosperity for my people, and I don't want you in the way, if you will, or something like that. He's not asking for a blessing from Abraham, right? He's not saying, swear to me that your God will bless me and my posterity. All I'm asking for is that you won't lie to me or my posterity. Can you do that, please? It's not much to ask for from a foreigner to the recipient of the promise.
Interesting, though, his posterity didn't treat Abraham's posterity all that well a century later.
Philistines?
No.
Yeah, some question about one of the big questions in that part of the world is, where did the Philistines come from? Because the speculation is that they were Phoenicians, since they were traders. We talked about that. And so you have the Phoenicians, Phoenicia, it's called Phoenicia in our modern maps, up north, or not in our modern maps, but in maps that we have of ancient times, up north with Tyre and Sidon, and then Phoenicians along the coast, the southern coast, opposite Rome, all the way over to Carthage, who also were Phoenicians. And so they were traders. The Carthaginians were famous or infamous traders, which is why they had the conflict with Rome. Which is why they couldn't even live together on opposite sides of the Mediterranean, even though they weren't fighting over territory. Well, I guess they did fight a little bit of territory over by Spain. But anyway, the history there, some of that's been lost. That's really interesting stuff to me, precisely because it intersects with biblical history. But anyway, he gets this acknowledgement out of Abraham on all these things, that you're a sojourner and so on and so forth. But he's really not a sojourner. He's going to be given the land. And so that's going to be the next story. He calls him a sojourner here, a traveler. You're just a visitor here in our land. So can you not cause problems for us? Or something like that. Abraham just simply says, okay, I will swear. And then immediately after that, a conflict arises. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, that's from the author of the book, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me. And I have not heard of it until today. So there's this accusatory, wait a minute, we talked about this, it's this moment of tension again. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart. What does ewe mean? What, female? Yeah. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart? And he said, these 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well. No more confusion. We're gonna make a deal. We're gonna ratify it. Therefore, that place was called Beersheba. So it's an origin story. It's called Beersheba among the Israelites. How did it get the name of Beersheba? Because all these places are going to be like Bethel. That's not the name of, Bethel wasn't the name of Bethel back during the time of Abraham. That's an anachronism. But that's what the people that he's writing to and in the conquest and following would know the city as, Bethel. I forget that, Luz? Was that the original name? Yeah, Luz. Therefore, that place was called Beersheba because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted, why would we care? Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. So, the fundamental question of Bible study, narrative, what is this story doing here? Why this here? They don't put this stuff by accident.
Amherst tree would probably be some sort of a monument in regards to discovery that was made. I'm guessing.
Instead of a pile of rocks.
Yeah.
I think it looks to me like it happens after. Abraham, the commander, and they return to the land of the Philistines. This almost has a transfer of ownership element to it. It's like his stake in the ground or something like that. The only thing that I can think of along those lines, and I'm not saying, I certainly ain't gonna do a sermon on this, is that you see once again exactly that he's staked the ground again in Canaan as his territory. When he
And
digs a well,
the tree is long living. So it's like, I'm here to stay.
no, I'm not doing a search.
Plant roots.
I don't know. That's from the larger narrative standpoint. It's an anticipation. It would be then it would be an anticipation thing. It foreshadows this is their land. This is going to be the land. Because he used the word posterity earlier. You will not deal falsely with my descendants or my posterity in 23. Well, Abraham's going to have a posterity, and that posterity is going to be precisely in the land that he's now planting trees on. That's the only thing I can think of. Why this story matters here. Why this here?
Remember that God told Abraham, any place your foot touches, that's gonna be.
There's that too, yeah. Walk, where does he do that? That's 13? That's actually a good point, and that's important. So I'm gonna go back and look at that.
Basically, he touched.
Yeah.
In the Philistine territory too, but they never took it over, so.
Arise, verse 17, arise. What, this is right after Lot is taken care of. He moves east, the other side of the Jordan. Arise, verse 17, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. And you're going to see Abraham travel. He's going to move around. He's in Mamre. He's in Bethel. He's in Mamre. He's over in what will become Philistine territory. And he digs wells, and he makes altars, and he plants trees, and so on and so forth.
And he will move again by the time Sarah dies.
He'll be in Hebron. That's very near Mamre, as a matter of fact. Yeah, right next to it. And there's Mamre right there, which are at Hebron. Yeah, that's right. He purchased the field for the burial place for Sarah, for himself and Sarah.
I think that's the only account with him purchasing property.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly.
But I think a lot of that is fulfillment of 17, verse 17 right there. He's going to arise and walk. It's not like Abraham went, okay, and then he sets out on a journey and he walks the perimeter of the promised land. I mean, you don't see that. What you do see, though, over the course of the next 8 or 9 chapters is him getting around, at least on the southern side, and he's moved around and he does these things. That's how I see it.
He was a shepherd of sorts, and shepherds typically do move around.
Yeah.
For pasture.
I might all I have to say. I've got this line from 10 years ago with my notes then. Says, we don't find out what happened to the well. I don't know why I cared. However, comma, occurs 32 more times in the Old Testament, but I left out whatever the word was before occurs, so I don't know what occurs 32 more times in the Old Testament.
Now, the thing, I know that during Isaac's lifetime, the well became an issue.
Yeah,
And, they fight over that, and, you know, they keep filling up the wells that Abraham
Yeah.
had dug. And they fight over that.
it's more than water. I think you sink a well and you're staking a claim.
Yeah.
And they don't take kindly to that. Yeah. All right, that's 22, 21. Anybody want to talk about that anymore?
Thing about the wells too is, they always seem to be famous wells. Abraham's well, Isaac's well, Jacob's well,
Yeah,
which basically tried to stay around the longest since Mary, went to the well of Jacob and,
Yep.
So the wells weren't exactly just a staking place, they were named, you know.
I put a lot of stock in those traditions. Where, at the time of Jesus, they said this is Jacob's well. And a lot of moderns will say, nah, they didn't know that. They're just making that. We don't know whether that was Jacob's well. My inclination is they took this really serious. I mean, they passed that knowledge down. They took that, it mattered to them to know that really was, for example, Jacob's well. And the early Christians are the same way with the sites they venerated in Jerusalem, like where the crucifixion of Jesus happened. There's a church what's that, Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
Holy Sepulchre.
Yeah, I put a lot of stock in that stuff. That really mattered to these people. Go ahead.
No, I'm not finished what you're saying.
There's this is irrelevant, so.
Mine is too, so.
Okay. I told this story, I was watching a documentary on King Richard, who died in battle. I forget what century, because back then kings would go to battle and that would happen. We can't even imagine with well, anyway. So this archaeologist was gonna try to find where he was buried. He was supposedly buried at a monastery. And so they think they located the monastery, which is underneath which is underground, because you build on top, they built on top. They had a city, and then they would build another city on top of that city. That's how they did things, which is why so much stuff is underground, including in Israel. They're called tells, where you have the city of Jericho, and then you have these layers one onto, and they can dig down and see the layers through the centuries of the different buildings of these cities. And so this parking lot, there's this parking lot where King Richard, supposedly there's a monastery under the ground, and there's this parking lot. So this is a documentary on YouTube. You can go watch it. Just trying to figure out how to find King Richard's tomb. And so they're in the parking lot, and there's this one place where there's an R painted on one of the parking spaces or something like that. So she said, let's dig here. They found Richard. And so they dug him up and they reconstructed him, his face, did facial reconstruction based on his, they found he was injured he had a certain, what did he have? What do you call it?
Yeah.
No, that's the one. Yeah.
Say it again.
Scoliosis.
Oh,
So they confirmed that, and they reconstructed the skull to get the face back. This archaeologist who went through all this she's looking at this thing, and she walks in, she sees it, and she said, He's cute.
Blind hardened?
I don't remember.
I don't even know. Say it's.
I gotta go look up, make sure I didn't imagine all of that. I'm gonna go verify all this again. But you can look it up on YouTube. Somebody can search YouTube right now and see if I'm making all this up or not.
So back to the comment about wells. I remember my Old Testament professor telling the guys, so listen up. Said. Let's see, Isaac's wife was met at a well. Jacob's wife was met at a well. Moses' wife was met at a well. So guys, if you're looking for a wife, hang around drinking fountains. He probably said it funnier than that.
Don't be surprised if you hear stories about a creepy guy hanging around at the water fountain.
You're talking about,
I think that's a better idea than meeting at a bar these days.
Could be.
Sharon was telling me about where they're looking for the chariots.
In the bottom, in the Gulf of Aqaba.
Yeah, case it in the video on that.
Yeah, I've watched a few on that as well. That's really interesting too. The research being done on the shroud right now is really interesting. Okay. That's well off track. It's 9:49, so let's do, no pun intended at the time. 22. We are bracketed here. You've reached this bracket right here. From the covenant of land in 15. We'll move from chapter 12, the promise, chapter 15, the covenant, where the promise becomes a covenant, or one element of it does, which is the land. Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. And then in 22, you will have the great statement by God. Now I know, because you have not withheld your son, your only son, whom you love. I don't know how he says it. We'll get to it in a second. And so on. Therefore, I will do these things. But he's already promised he will do these things. Yeah, as early as 12. That's what he's doing there in the land in the first place. So that's going to be the narrative. That. So let's take a look here. How far do we want to read? Just a couple verses. Immediately, boy, does this happen fast. There's no, it's time, the compression, narrative compression. You move from 2022, the resolution, the birth, he was just born. He was born 34 verses ago. That's when he was born. As he had promised. That's 22. The Lord did Sarah as he promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. Take your son, your only son, Isaac, uses the name he told him to give, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. Wow. Talk about a curveball. So all these threats to the covenant promise have been resolved. You have, let's see. Abraham going to Egypt. The offer of Lot to take the land if he wants it. The barrenness of Sarah. The presence of Ishmael. And then the actions of Abimelech taking Sarah, all of which were resolved. And now the offering of Isaac. And there's no way back from that. Because God has already promised. So he's already promised through Isaac. No, not through Ishmael. Not through Ishmael, but through Isaac. Now he says, I want you to go offer Isaac. So he creates the threat. The final and definitive threat to his own ability to fulfill his covenant promise. And you have this concentric intimacy, if you will. I probably didn't make that up. Take your son, your only son, whom you love. Take that which means the most to you in life. life had no meaning before this son. Now life has meaning. Take the son that gives your meaning to your life and offer that son as a burnt offering. And it's very similar to 12 when he calls Abraham out of Haran. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house, so this concentric circles, closer and closer to him, to the land that I will show you. Doesn't tell him the land. To the land that I will show you. Now, same exact kind of thing. Abraham's heard all this kind of thing before. Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. So Abraham's going, well, where have I heard this before? He actually did make me do that. It's not like he said, I was just kidding. It's not like I set out south and headed towards Canaan, and then he went, no, I was just kidding. You can go back to your family if you want. That didn't happen. So it's not like he's expecting, I was just kidding. I'm not really going to have you do that. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
At this point in time, Abraham had seen God validate his word over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Even when Abraham himself was faithless.
And we will see then whether that lesson is learned and how Abraham is going to respond in this situation.
I'm sitting here thinking, can I take Ishmael?
Yeah. If there's no other, that's right. He's already run Ishmael out.
Yeah, he must have disowned him because
Gone.
God called Isaac his only son.
It's not like he's gonna, that's a good point. It's his only son now. It's not like Abraham, if he offers Isaac, he can go, well, maybe he can, but he's probably not gonna go back and try to chase down Ishmael. Ishmael might be doing, well, no, he's not that old yet, but it's just around the corner. Well, we don't know how actually, we don't know. Do we know how old?
We know that Isaac must have been a teenager because he carried the wood up the mountain. He couldn't have been a child to do that.
Yeah.
One thing that's kind of interesting too is God doesn't tell us how old Isaac is at the time. He just, so you don't know how many years in between the time he was born and this.
He's just called the boy.
Yeah.
The narrator calls him the boy. Oh, actually, the angel calls him the boy.
So, you don't know if he was, old enough to walk and speak and everything else, but, don't know if he was 8 years old, 12 years old or whatever.
Well, like I said before, though, he had to have been old enough to carry up firewood up the mountain.
Sure.
That's not a preteen.
No.
Yeah, but young enough to be overpowered by how old of a guy?
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, 100
100 years
plus.
old.
Well.
We don't know how that, we don't know the dynamic between them. I mean,
I've always assumed that it's Isaac's submission. Because, of course, we live in an age where to live to 100 is odd. Back then it wasn't, so Abraham might have been a whole lot more vigorous. After all, after Sarah died, and Abraham was, 130 probably when she died. He had
more
more sons
kids.
and daughters.
no, and there's the providence of God working over the whole situation, influencing both of them. You don't ever get the sense in this that Isaac is doing anything under compulsion or force. It's just unfolding with the providential presence of God in the situation. So I don't have any problem with that. Working out again, if you buy in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, yes, I believe God created the heavens and the earth, but there's just no way they're going to get Isaac to submit to this. Come on. No. Yeah, I believe God created the heavens and the earth, but the resurrection of Lazarus, come on, he'd be decomposing. Come on, that's ridiculous. Sure, okay.
I think it shows that Isaac had a trust in his father here. I mean, most of us would be questioning our father, where are we going, Dad? What are we doing? What are we doing? What do we got this wood for?
Well, he does.
Yeah.
Where's the land?
I'm just saying he's trusting. his
Yeah, I was
dad,
just asking. Yeah.
It's not a lack of trust in Isaac here.
So there's no verbal objection. He just does it. We would, if you saw the situation on video, if you saw it on the ground, it probably would make more sense. We're trying to concoct in our minds how this might have gone, and the only way we can do that is through our own modern cultural lenses and filters, and you know. The sense of, our modern sense of individuality, which we'll talk about this summer, because we're gonna do some culture issues, individualism, personal sovereignty, these kinds of things, you know. Modern Western culture is now just saturated in this idea of individual autonomy and sovereignty, and that's, you got to put all that aside when you're talking about ancient peoples. They have no concept of the way we do, no concept of that whatsoever. Not the way we think of it. All right, let's keep going. 3 through 9. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac, cut the wood for the burnt offering. Notice it's a burnt offering. What's the point of calling it a burnt offering? God told him to offer him as a burnt offering. What's the point of the burnt offering? The whole thing is consumed. Everything. Offer your son as a burnt offering. In whole and in part. In part and in whole. It's got a, let's see, for the burnt offering and rose and went to the place of which God had told him. We don't find out what that was. Third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. He does not say, I will come again to you. I and the boy will go. The implication is, and we will come back to you. It's not spoken, but that's the implication of the way he says it. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac, his son, says it again. He took in his hand the fire and the knife, so they went, I say he's going to use a knife, because that's what you did with burnt offering. They went both of them together, and Isaac said to his father, Abraham, my father. He said, here I am, son. So you get this emphasis on father and son. The story has been waiting for Isaac's birth since chapter 12. That's been the point, waiting for Isaac's birth for 9 chapters, 10 chapters now. And here we are. Here I am, son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. Son. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in this sequence. Not done yet. Something to say. Actually, I'll have a lot to say. We're going one more verse. I don't have anything more to say about that. It speaks for itself. It slows the narrative down, the narrative expansion and contraction. It's the birth of Isaac is just upon us in 21. There's no lead up to it. It's just there at the after 20, and you know, the story of Sodom. Boom, he's just there after God says, this time next year I'll be back, and then he's born. This time with the sacrifice of Isaac, slows the narrative down. Very detailed conversation between Isaac and Abraham, and that's the way the whole narrative is going to go.
There are a lot of parallels here with Christ.
There are. It's a question of what to do with them, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got your only son. God, Christ was the only begotten of the Father. You have Isaac carrying the wood of the sacrifice up the hill.
Yep,
You have Christ carrying his cross up Golgotha Hill,
atonement,
atonement, all, and
Yep.
it's so much here.
like a lamb.
And God will provide for him, so
Yep,
a lamb for the offering.
and no New Testament author makes use of that.
Maybe,
Yep, it has to be deliberate. So the question becomes then, what's wrong with that analogy? What's wrong with that parallelism? We would. We wrote the story, we would do it. We would make the parallel, but they did not, and they knew. They did use Isaac in other ways, but they did not use it, they did not use him that way. And it's not like, I mean, the whole Mosaic sacrificial framework is a foreshadowing of the atoning death of Jesus. That's the only way, you can't make sense of the atoning death of Jesus without understanding that. So it's not like they were reluctant to make those kinds of parallels, but there's none of that when it comes to Isaac.
Well, he's saying, God's gonna provide a lamb, then in Hebrews it says he considered God was able to even raise him from the dead.
Yes,
Right.
and you don't get any of that either here, but I'm not inspired. So, you know. But you would never know that. You need Hebrews to understand that.
Yeah.
As far as what make the, you can squeeze it into that reference. Abraham's response to Isaac. When Abraham says God will provide, there's where you can go, okay. He's got faith that I'll do it. I will plunge the knife, but I don't think he's gonna make me do it. I think he's gonna provide another way, but I'm willing to do it, and if he doesn't stop me, I'm gonna do it. So the angel literally, who is God himself, the angel literally has to stop him. That's the point. He is going to do it. And then he can't wait to go find some other animal to offer, which isn't gonna be a lamb. It's gonna be a ram.
Is there significance in that? Ram, lamb?
Well,
Like,
a lot of it is the territory. I mean, you wouldn't find a sheep up in the mountains. You'd find a ram.
well, a ram is also the term for a male sheep sometimes, it could be one ram, it could just be a.
The implication is caught in the thicket. So, yeah.
So there's a ram as a substitute.
Yes, I mean, it's all, yeah, you're right, I know, it's begging for it. And I think the important part of that is not to draw out the parallels. That's not the important thing to do. The important thing is to try to understand why maybe they did not do that. Why Isaac is not. The sacrifice, the near sacrifice of Isaac is not a type of the sacrifice of Christ.
Because there was nothing comparable to it. Fully.
Well,
I mean, there's things that point in that direction. We do have the whole Lamb of God, who thinks we're the king of the world, so there's that, everything pointing to that. But there's no human story that can compare to the sacrifice of Christ.
well, they did use rams in the sacrificial. Thing, because God told them bring like, once a year, bring two rams. You kill one, you lay your hand on the other one on sins and then, but.
Yep, the scapegoat thing, yeah.
So, you know, God still used rams no matter what, throughout the Old Testament, sacrifices, so.
Okay, I don't have anything more to say about that. It kind of speaks for itself. Except that it's very slow narrative, very deliberate. When they came to where are we at? Oh, 7. When they came to the place of which God had told them, and we're not going to find out. Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham reached out his hand, took the knife. I don't think I've ever seen this done in movie form, which is weird. But anyway, Abraham reached out his hand, took the knife to slaughter his son, uses the language of sacrifice, slaughter. But, here it is, another one of the great but God passages. The angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, for the third time, I believe, second time. No, yeah, this third time, right? Your son, your only son? One, two, three. He's Isaac. Isaac is the son, the only son, whom you love throughout the passage. Because you have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you. We'll go back and look at 12. And I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gates of his enemy. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Not through faith, but because you have obeyed my voice. So it's a recapitulation of the promise in 17, in 12, where we started. That's why this is such a great bracket. It begins with that promise, and we'll look at it right now. In 12. So put these by each other. Go forth from your country and your kindred and your father's house. There's that concentric intimacy thing. To the land that I will show you. Not specific. And I will make of you a great nation. I will bless those and bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. He just promises to bless. Not if you do what I say, I will bless you. It's I'm going to bless you. It's the promise out of his mouth. That's it. It's a decree. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you, why don't they say curse? I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And now what you see in 22, because of an act of obedience, and point is made in the New Testament, that's why he's going to do the promise that he made in chapter 12. Now it's because of obedience. He says, he's going to recapitulate the entire sequence in chapter 12. I will bless you. I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven. That's in there. Your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. In your offspring, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. So which is it? Is it just a decree of God, independent of anything Abraham does? Or is he going to bless Abraham because Abraham obeyed his voice? It's one on each end of the bracket. I'm just pointing out only in the Bible would you see this no attempt to try to reconcile. There's no footnote like we would put in about faith and works. There's none of that. It's just, they just do it, blah, they just do it. They just put it in there. Go ahead, Mike, sorry.
Well, I mean, I look at it as the same as when he first called Abraham family. I mean, you're talking about a man that was worshiping other gods. All of a sudden, God comes and says, I want you to leave your family and I want you to go and walk in this land that I'm going to give you and your descendants. You know, it's the same with this. I mean, it's like, even though he had a relationship with God for 25, 30 years or whatever it is by this time, all of a sudden it's like you take your son to a mountain, I'm going to tell you, and you sacrifice him. There's only one way to tell him is that he believed God, he was
No question. Yeah.
counted for righteousness and out of faith. You know, you usually don't leave your family when you don't even know a God that you never even heard of before. All of a sudden, you're just following his, obeying his word.
Makes me think about kids chorus. Obedience. Obedience is the verb.
So Abraham returned to his young men. They arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham, we're right back where we started. Nothing happened. Nobody did anything. He went for a trip. He came back. No, there's nothing different on the ground. He didn't pick up anything. He didn't make any covenants. He went out and he came back, but the history of redemption is radically reaffirmed. Garrett, I don't know how you want to say it, in what happened in between. It's a monumental moment, but it's all spiritual. It's all, it happens in the realm of redemptive history or something like that. So you go to James, we'll probably want to look at this next week a little bit, who's right on it, to Mike's point. He's all over this. What good, we'll look at this next week, but I'll read it. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? Your brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking daily food, and one of you says, go in peace, be warmed and filled. That's exactly what Jesus indicted the leadership for. Without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. And then he's going to use Abraham as an example for that. In verse 21, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered up Isaac, his son Isaac, on the altar? Without question. That's the whole point. Now I know. It gives reality to Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. It's that statement fully formed and realized in verse 20, in chapter 22. You see that faith was was working or active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works, perfected. This is another one of those that I've read so many times I got it memorized in New American Standard.
Yeah.
And the scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him or counted to him as righteousness. And he was called a friend of God. Then the statement that just throws everybody in a tither. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. And all the Paul people erupt. How can this be? And then we go about trying to figure out a way to explain how James really doesn't mean what he obviously means. And once we figure out how he doesn't mean that, we move on. To which I respond, wait a minute, I'll drag you back to the verse and tell me what he does mean. Paul doesn't have superior inspiration to James. These guys are peers in the hierarchy of inspiration. They all are. The hierarchy is horizontal of inspiration. They're all peers. They're all mouthpieces of God. So what does he mean? He means exactly what he said, and it makes perfect sense. If you don't try to overwrite him with Paul and assume that Paul has the upper hand in some way and that James has to submit to Paul. You just let them sit there. They're making different points. They're doing different things, and you let them sit there and just hold it and understand each in his end. We'll go back and look at that a little bit. We got to stop now.
This way, here's back to verse 2.
Here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. All right.
James.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna go back and look at, we'll go back and do that again. You can cogitate on James too. A little bit. We're going to stop now. Thanks for joining. Everyone, in the Zoom feed.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Take care.
Next Memorial weekend.